Hi, I'm Tristan and welcome to the Tristan channel, and in this video I've created a compilation of TikTok stories to react to. This channel was suggested by our friend Sergeant Powell's Twinkies. Go check out their channel, link is in the description below. Go over and share the love. And I'm quite chuffed as this is the first time I've created a compilation video instead of just reacting to one that someone else has made. I haven't seen or listened to these clips and the order isn't rated from best to worst. It's just, I'll just let it straightforward 1 to 5 instead of 5 to 1. I will maybe in future videos do otherwise as I get the knack of it. Knack for it, sorry. And as always, the link to the source channel is in the description below. Excuse me, got a bit of a throat. And so, without further ado, let's do this. Right. So my phone was being silly buggers as I had the Bluetooth still on. Despite there's no devices currently on, it's but anyway. What the hell's that? Number 1.
Just to preface this, I am male and so is my husband. My husband and I met at work and I had trained him and we hit it off straight away, but the problem was we were both married to other people at the time, so we just formed a great friendship. Fast forward a year and a half and I had hit a rough patch with my partner and he hit a rough patch with his partner. We would talk for hours and would offer advice and we would try and save each other's relationships, but to no avail. We ended up splitting up with our respective partners a month apart from each other and we took a break from relationships. And we had a great support for each other. Fast forward another year and we started spending pretty much 24/7 together, and eventually I had realised that I needed to be with him all the time. One night we sat down in front of the TV at his house and ate dinner. When we finally finished, ended up doing the dishes, he grabbed me afterwards and kissed me, and that was the start of our relationship.
Good morning.
Making the relationship official. So at this point, we had known each other for about 3.5 years. We had moved in together and life was wonderful. And on our 4-year anniversary of meeting, he proposed to me and we were married on our 5th year meeting anniversary. Now, I know that sounds weird, but we wouldn't propose or marry on romantic dates, but the way he saw it is those dates were progression dates. The meet date is the date that we officially met, and that was symbolic to him. People had huge problems with our relationship, considering we were both straight males. Surprised? Thought so. As it turns out, after many discussions and searching, we are both pansexual. If you don't know what that means, it means you fall in love with the person, nothing else. We had a great relationship.
Which, not be funny, it's essentially that's what a bisexual person is. It's just that people split hairs with it. There's not much difference, to be fair. You'll find also, as you get older, it's more of a mature thing anyway. You tend to go for the personality. You have your teenage kick years where you're like, oh, you know what I mean. But at the end of the day, we all want personality. We want someone sensible and that to, all that sort of stuff. But
work was great. We still work together. He was the head of one department and me another, and we purchased a nice house, had nice cars. Everything in our lives was pretty standard, normal, nothing out of the ordinary. One night I was awoken to him screaming. I woke him up and he said he had a bad dream that someone plucked his soul straight out of his body and had taken over his body, and that he was watching from afar. So I settled him down and he went back to sleep. The next few weeks he kept having dreams about his death and that someone was trying to take over his body. It was almost a nightly occurrence, but he just couldn't shake it. So, me being some sort of spiritual person, I sought advice from some mediums and clairvoyants and Wiccans, and
oh, here we go. Mediums I wouldn't trust them with a 10-foot barge pole.
Had someone come to the house and cleanse it. After the cleanse, the house energy seemed to improve, and things had returned to normal. Husband was happy self again, and we went back to normal life. One day, husband had to go back to work late, so he said he would see me at home. We always took 2 cars for this reason. I went home, fed the dog, got dinner started, and chilled out for a bit before he got home. About an hour later, phone started ringing. It just said unknown caller. So I answered it, and it was my husband. And there was a lot of static, but every second or third word it would cut out. So he said, "Remember, I will always love you." And the phone cut out. He walks in the door about 20 minutes later, and I asked him what the phone call was about, and he just casually says to me, "Oh, nothing." So we go into the kitchen, and I start getting things ready to serve dinner. I looked at his eyes, and they looked weird, like they weren't his. But I had put that down to him maybe being tired, so I continued serving dinner. We sat down and ate, and nothing out of the ordinary occurred. I do the dishes and then head outside to water the garden while husband has a shower. I noticed his car wasn't there when I went out, and I thought, that's odd. And we both had fairly modern vehicles, reliable, you know. So I go inside and I call out to him, and he says he'll be out in a minute. At that moment, there was a knock on the door, and it was the police. "Sir, we're sorry to inform you, but we found your husband's car down an embankment, and unfortunately, he's passed away on impact." I said,
Oh.
"No, he's in the shower. You must be mistaken." They looked confused for a moment, then looked behind me and went white as white could be. I turned around, and there was my husband, standing there, stark naked, with this deranged look on his face, his smile from ear to ear, like he was going to eat us. He then, at lightning speed, flew past me and between the officers, then across the street into the bushland, never to be seen again. The officers had found my husband's body after the accident. Their shock was justified. There was not much left of my husband, well, not in one piece anyway. I was only ever allowed to see his face. The rest of him was unrecognizable. So up until the point that the police were there, this entity looked and acted just like my husband. I mean, I did feel a bit uneasy. I wasn't sure what that was because of, so I just shrugged it off. But when the police were there and I looked at him, he looked like inhumane. He looked like some demon spawn from heaven. His smile. And when I say ear to ear, I mean literally his mouth opened up so much that the corner of his mouth on both sides nearly touched his ears. And the teeth, his jaw, also stretched like his whole cheekbones were nothing, and he didn't have them, but he was just mouth and teeth. And his eyes, there was nothing in his eyes, just black, no whites, no colour, no iris pupil, just black. The thing is, I've had a lot of demonic entities in my life, and some of the things he would tell me about in the dreams, I should have known, but I just never had them latch onto another person in my life before, only me, so I didn't think anything of it at the time. But looking back on the content of his dreams and just some random things that happened to him, our lives, and I should have just done more. I have for many years tried to ignore these entities, as giving them a voice gives them strength. I never thought I would lose someone to them. Now I stay by myself.
Which is nonsense, you know, the whole idea of... Oh, I also forgot, some of these are creepy. They're freaky, but some of these are creepypasta stories. They're not strictly true, you know what I mean? But the whole idea of giving a ghost a voice, like acknowledging all that stuff, like, I can't remember what channel said it or something, is absolute nonsense, because at the end of the day, if your house is haunted and there's... If it's determined to cause hassle, it will do it regardless. If you ignore it, it's just going to get worse. It'll throw knives at you and shit like that. You know what I mean? So it's ludicrous, you know what I mean? It's the idea of like opening doors and letting spirits in. It's like the old mummy the word for mummy. Mummies don't use doors. Ghosts don't need doors.
Live a lonely life, and I blame myself for his death. From what I heard, the two officers went through years of counselling, but one of them took his own life because he couldn't cope, and the other one died in unknown circumstances.
Oh, God. Number 2. That was a good one. That was good. Yeah, like I said, that's probably a creepypasta story, because that would be in the newspapers. I mean, that was in the realms of Close Encounters of the Fourth Kind. You know what I mean? That's like... That would be in the news, you know what I mean? Like, you know, so that's definitely a creepypasta, but no, that's pretty spooky. It's like those old classic horror stories, isn't it? Where the loved one comes home, or you know what I mean? That whole, you know, it's like, oh no, it can't be dead. I just met them or talked to them a few minutes ago. Good. So, number 2.
So I remember we were in the Animal Kingdom part of the park. I was always really interested in natural history when I was growing up, so I was particularly excited to see this part of the park and was incredibly happy and excited to be there. I had to wait 3 whole days at this place before we finally got to see that particular part of it, and every other kid there seemed to be just as happy as I was, all except one.
Sorry, just you know what I mean. What I was trying to get earlier when they said, "Oh, they're pansexual." The whole idea of the definitions are ludicrous these days. You know, the whole verses, the differences and all that. It's ludicrous because at the end of the day, the attitude's both the same. You know what I mean? So I just want to add that little chestnut of information. It's like bisexuals are pretty much the same attitude as pansexuals. You know what I mean? Plus, as you get older and maturer, you go for personality anyway. So
On the shuttle bus out of the park, I remember seeing this one little girl with her dad who looked uncharacteristically miserable for a kid who had the actual good fortune of visiting this place. But I mean, there's always one moody kid out of the bunch, isn't there? One who never seems to have any fun no matter what's happening. So honestly, as confused as I was about it, I forgot about it pretty quickly, as my own excitement at seeing all the animals quickly overwhelmed me. My favourite film was The Lion King, so go figure, I was buzzed. But throughout the day, whether we were on the rides or on the little safari tour thing, or eating at one of the cafes there, I'd see this little girl and her dad, and she looked consistently exhausted and unhappy. I found myself staring to the point where my mum and dad were like, "Stop staring at other kids, it's rude." So I did, because I knew they were right. Of course it was rude to stare, and besides that, the little girl seemed awful upset, and surely me staring at her would just make her feel worse. So a little while later, I remember walking around, drinking one of those ginormous American zillion-ounce sodas, or whatever, happy as Larry, when I see this little girl and her dad in front of us. I'm not going to pretend I was like, all, I knew something was wrong. I sensed it, because I didn't, not all. But one thing struck me as kind of odd about the whole thing was by the time I was 10, I hated holding my mum or dad's hand. It's what babies did, in my opinion, as a 10-year-old. And just like me, this little girl didn't seem all that keen on holding her dad's hand, and at one point even tried to shake it loose. But he kept holding on to her, and at one point started properly gripping her around the waist, telling her to behave. I obviously found this kind of distressing, and I looked up at my dad as if to be like, "Are you seeing this?" Half expecting to be told to stop staring again. Both my parents looked kind of concerned about what was going on, but I didn't dare say anything. I was old enough to know that some kids misbehave sometimes, and people around just
it could be some weirdo bastard, excuse me,
had to do that kind of cringy thing that we pretend it's not happening kind of feeling. Only then, instead of just calming down, the little girl bursts into tears and starts wailing, "I want my mummy! I want my mummy!" While the guy is trying his best to calm her down like, "Oh, we'll get you mummy soon, sweetie," and all this other stuff. What happened next is kind of a blur in my memory. There was just a lot of commotion, but this is how my dad tells the story from his perspective. Apparently, while the girl is waiting, my dad hears her blatantly say, "I want daddy, where is my daddy?" The way he tells it,
Oh,
the
God.
mood in the crowd around us visibly shifts as it suddenly becomes obvious that this guy that had been taking her around the park was not her father. There's slight hesitation though, no one actually acts on the revelation.
Oh God! Basically, they're witnessing a kidnapping. I'll get more comfortable. I'm getting a bit uncomfortable sat like this. Oh, yeah, it's a bit. There's something fishy, isn't there, about that sort of behaviour? You know what I mean? Where it's like, I mean, it's interesting, right? It just goes to show you don't matter what age you are, your instincts and all that, to tell you something that's wrong.
For the first few minutes or so, and for good reason, because the guy might have been her uncle or a family friend or a legal guardian or carer. There was nothing evidently insidious about it. That is, until the guy snaps at her in a way that is distinctly unparental. Apparently, some other American dad was all like, "Is there a problem, buddy?" And the guy is quick to calm the situation down by telling them that no, there's no problem, the little girl is just having a temper tantrum. Then someone asks if the guy is actually the girl's dad, to which he apparently replies yes, before trying to reassure the gathering crowd that everything was okay and she was just having a tantrum. Now the next part I remember pretty clearly, because the girl shouted something before the man clamped his hand over her mouth so hard it sounded like a slap. My mum started to pull me and my little sister away from the scene since it was starting to turn ugly, really fast. According to my dad's version of it, what the girl had screamed before the guy tried to shut her up was that he wasn't her dad at all. Not only that, but he had took her. That's
Oh
when it
God.
starts getting confusing for me again, because all kinds of people were moving forward and blocking my view, shouting and shoving kicks off. But I do remember seeing this woman shove her way through the crowd of people with the same little girl in her arms, who by that point was just sobbing uncontrollably. After that, I remember seeing the crowd that had formed around the guy begin to sway and shift. There were lots of shouts and screams, and I mean the kind of screams that were so intense and frightening that they made me shake and shiver with fear, and my little sister burst into tears. By the time the park security showed up, who 10-year-old me just assumed were the police, the crowd had begun to disperse, and I remember distinctly seeing the man who had apparently taken the little girl from God knows where, pinned to the ground with somebody on top of him. That's about the only part that I can still remember crystal clear to this day. A lot of my memory has been filled in with my mum and dad's retelling of the event, but the image of the guy's rage and how it twisted up his features, it still burns into my mind, and it's made more sinister by the fact that I now know what he was so angry about. He'd taken that little girl and kept her pliant because he'd promised her a trip around Disneyland. She was probably so keen to go that she hadn't fought back, and God knows what he was intending on doing with her afterwards. That chance had been taken away from him by a bunch of do-gooders. At least that's the way I imagine he thought of it. Playing this sick, long game of lulling his prey into a false sense of security before he finally got his way with her. Not that I realised any of that at the time. We have absolutely no idea what happened to the man or the little girl after that, and no one spoke about it for the rest of the holiday. Thank God there were people there that reacted the way they did, and thank God that she spoke up when she did, because I really don't want to think about the alternative.
Oh God, that's those sort of stories are worse than the paranormal ones, aren't they? I mean, that's sick. There's some sick people in the world. I mean, that's why kids probably won't be watching this video because for grown ups, because of the language and content with them. This is why kids should always stay close to their parents, and why you should always, because I'm not a parent, but from observation, I can say, because I work with the public, and that is a lot of people are glued to their phones. And this is the problem you see. If you're going to a theme park and you're taking your kids out for the day, you shouldn't be on your phone. You should be, it's their day, essentially. You're treating them, yeah? You're meant to be having fun with them, yeah? The only time you should be getting your phone out is for taking a photo or a selfie with them, etc. But, you know what I mean? So it's always best to always, keep your eye on it. Make sure everyone, because you don't want some weirdo bastard like this weirdo bastard getting hold of your children. So, number 3.
No one dies at Disney. When I finished my bachelor's, I applied to work in the park, I won't say which one, and I got lucky out of a few dozen. It was only a janitorial job, but nothing gave me the thrill more than working in the same park that basically housed my childhood. I was given decent pay, some benefits, and I was given a shift from noon to midnight, perfect to smell the cookies in the day and to enjoy the fireworks at night time. I worked with 2 people who wore suits, and they were some of the greatest people that I'd ever known in the park. One was called Jim, who was tall yet lanky, enough to wear the Goofy costume, and Damien, who had the talent to voice Donald perfectly, thus had the job of working the suit. Of course, they were a little older than I was, so they knew more about the park than I did. When I was starting to work there, Damien was given the task of showing me around the underground. Oh yeah, bud, you'll love working here. Of course, you'll be down here most of the time, but you'll get used to it. Damien was the giddy one with lots of energy, so I had to keep up and pay attention simultaneously. He showed me the security room, the suit room, the medical room, and the garbage disposal machine where we had to wear masks to dispel the smell. At the end of the tour, we passed a door that seemed a bit off. There were many locks on it and what seemed like padding around the door frame. I asked what the door's purpose was, and Damien stopped. His normally cheery and boisterous demeanour shattered, and he spoke with fear and resentment. Don't enter that door. Don't ask, don't wonder, don't attempt. Let's keep going. I was kind of scared after that, but I followed his orders. It was the fireworks during the 4th of July where I helped Damien and Jim into the new suits. These suits were different than the others, since they were made with dry fur and had plastic gloves and eyes. Jim didn't like the suit very much and had to wear it since it came with a raise, but Damien didn't care. They were going to stand on a raised platform and wave, so it didn't matter what suit they wore. I was just a bit concerned for them, but they reassured me it was going to be fine. I wish I convinced them to think otherwise. Later on, the fireworks were lighting up the starry night sky in the blaze of glory. I was cleaning up the underground during that time. That's when something happened. Disney paramedics rushed through, carrying 2 horribly burned suits that were crying and screaming in agony. I rushed behind and into the medical room after them. The new Donald and Goofy suits. which were still being worn by Damien and Jim, were present. Jim had lost both legs, half his right arm, and had firework shards on his chest, while
Bloody
Damien's
hell.
suit beak was torn straight into the jaw, which was also torn off. He was missing both arms and the suit's legs charred into his. Turns out the fireworks had lost their stand during their takeoff and shot a big bomb near them, launching them into some flammable shrubbery. Sight made me so sick I nearly passed out. The boss came through and assured me it'll be okay, but I knew they were going to die. I ran through the underground into the bathroom and threw up and cried for my friends. Later on, their names were erased from the work schedule and their folders were burnt. The bosses and co-workers never mentioned their names again, and I heard the door that was padded was opened and then shut. I tolerated that job for the rest of the year, cleaning near their workstations, occasionally letting a teardrop fall. Every time I cleaned around that door, I sometimes hear a knock or a whisper saying, "Buddy." Something Damien used to say to me. I shuddered every time I heard it. I went to the
Oh, something freaky going behind that door.
boss to collect my last paycheck, and I mentioned Damien's name. Who? Damien. The Donald that died in the summer. Then he said something to me that took all the magic out of the park. Don't be ridiculous. No one dies at Disney. I left with the fear in my mind and a gut-wrenching feeling. Whatever was behind that door, it was not special or important enough for them to care about. It haunts me to this day, what people don't know about.
That was suddenly abrupt end, but bloody hell. Oh, they're both behind that door. They've hid them behind the door, hid all the evidence that they ever worked there. Number 4.
Just a pre-warning that viewer discretion is advised that this content does contain abuse against minors. Why I'll never go to Disney again. Disney World's Toontown.
Oh, there we go. This is another a story about a sick bastard.
Was my first job out of high school, and at the beginning everything was great. For those of you who don't remember, Toontown was where Mickey and Minnie lived in the park and had everything you would imagine would be in a real neighborhood. A neighborhood that a cartoon would live in. There were houses, kitchens, bedrooms. Kids could even go in and microwave stuff on a little cartoon microwave. Donald Duck had a little houseboat. You could go inside. Goofy had his roller coaster. There were a lot of cool things, and although it was for kids, I actually really liked it. I mean, where in the world could you actually go and step into a real cartoon village? That was all until I started working the night shift there. What in the daytime looked cute and silly quickly became creepy after the sun went down and guests left the park. I worked in custodial, so I was one of the last people to go through the park at night, and unfortunately I had to go in alone. So one night I was doing my rounds and emptying the trash cans. I walked straight through Toontown to try and get to Tomorrowland and back to the front of the park. I was finishing a 10-hour day and was definitely ready to get out, so I was walking pretty fast. Normally all of the little houses were dark and the sound effects would be turned off. Not tonight though. I went back there and all the lights and effects were still going strong throughout the entire area. I was dumbfounded. This was a serious departure from protocol, so I had to tell someone about it, and people were going to get into serious trouble. I continued walking and pulled out my radio bit. As soon as I did, everything shut off. I then heard shuffling in the distance and I thought I saw a tail go into some bushes over near the train station. I figured out it was probably just some raccoon or something. The area back there was completely surrounded by national forests, and animals turned up all the time, so I completely forgot about it and went about the rest of the night. During my shift the next morning, though, I heard some very disturbing news about that area. A rat was found gutted and smeared all over Minnie Mouse's house floor.
Oh.
The official story was that it was killed by a possum or two, but the amount of carnage involved seemed suspicious to me. Anyways, it was business as usual, of course. The amount of situations at this park that could happen before there is any change in operation is truly astounding. That was until later in the evening I saw a batch of policemen and security officers crowded around Main Street, strategizing something. For that amount of them to all be gathered around one place meant something definitely must have happened. I found one of my leaders standing over on a sidewalk staring over at the group. I asked her what had happened and she said she wasn't sure, but she heard something about a baby going missing. I have never heard about anything like that happening in these parks, so that really creeped me out. By the time I did my sweep later that night, it was about 2 a.m. I did all of my normal tasks, but I was certainly dreading getting to Toontown. I was still kind of shook up by the events from the night before, even though I knew that they were honestly pretty much normal. So by the time I got to the area, I was relieved to see that the lights and sound effects were not on. I approached an empty trash can in front of Minnie's house, and I noticed through the window that the cartoon refrigerator was still open. I figured that one of the crazy interns must have forgotten to shut the door when they closed down the park for the night.
Oh, she's going to find something fucked up in the fridge, isn't she? Oh my god, here we go, brace for it, folks.
So I walked inside the house and went to the kitchen to close it, but when I tried, it didn't close all the way. Fear suddenly surged through my veins. I automatically knew something was wrong. I slowly opened the refrigerator door, and I witnessed, to my horror, an infant inside.
I hope that was a creepypasta. Like I said, some of these are creepypasta stories, and they're really good stories, but yeah. Oh, but yeah, I hope they were creepy. You know, some of these, especially the one with the kid holding the hand. You know, the previous story that was like that's something that could be real as a real story, but you know what I mean. So it's just yeah. Oh, this is good. Last one, number 5.
911, what is your emergency? Yeah, hi. This is going to sound a bit strange, but there's a man stumbling around in circles in my front yard. Could you repeat that, sir? He looks sick or lost or drunk or something. I just woke up to get a glass of water and heard snow crunching around underneath my front window, so I peeked out. I'm looking at him right now. He's about 10 yards from my window. Something's not right. What is your address, sir? 1617 Quarry Lane in Pinella Pass. I'm going to send a squad car your way, but that's quite a ways out. Are you alone in your house, sir? Yeah, I'm alone. Can you confirm that all of your doors and windows are locked? Stay on the phone with me. I know that my front door is definitely locked, but I'll go check my back door again really quick.
That's what she said. Oh, sorry, I got a bad throat. Sorry.
I appreciate your help, by the way. I know this is kind of strange, but I really hope that... Sir, are you still there? He's still in the yard, but what the fuck? He's upside down. Sir, stay on with me. What is happening? He's staring right at me, but he's standing on his hands now. He's perfectly still, just staring straight at me. He's doing a handstand and smiling at me, and he's not moving. He's doing a handstand, sir. I don't know how he... he's facing me and standing on his hands, and he's got this huge smile, and he's perfectly still like, what the fuck? Can somebody please get someone here now? Sir, I need you to remain calm. I've put out the call, and an officer is on his way. His teeth are so huge, like, what the fuck? Please help me. Sir, I want you to try and keep an eye on him, but make sure your back door is locked again. We need to make sure all possible access points are secured. Can you talk me through and confirm that your back door is locked? Yeah, okay, I'm walking backwards now. I'm going to keep him in my eyesight. My hand is on the back door knob now. It's locked. I just need to check the deadbolt, so I'm going to take my eyes off it for a split second. All right, sir, help is on the way. Just stay on the phone with me. Everything's going to be all right. Sir? Sir, are you there? His face is up against the glass. Sir, I need you to speak up. I can't hear you. What is happening? I looked away for a split second, and now his face is pressed up against my window. His teeth are huge, and he's smiling. There's no colour in his eyes.
Oh, God.
Please, Jesus, help me. Why won't it just fucking move? Sir, I need you to go to the nearest room and lock yourself inside. Do you have a basement or a bedroom that you can lock yourself in? He won't stop staring. He's going to hurt me. Sir, I need you to listen to me. Lock yourself somewhere safe until the officer arrives at your house. Can you hear me? Yes, I'm going to lock myself in my room. And you're positive that you are in the house alone, sir, correct? Yes, I'm in the house alone. Wait a moment. He's moving. He's shaking his head. He's telling me no. He can hear us. He's telling me I'm not alone. Sir?
Oh.
Sir, are you still there? I heard a loud noise. Is everything all right? Sir?
Oh, God. that laugh, was that the guy? Oh my god! Oh, that was good. That was a good one. That was. Oh, that laugh's like. Oh, oh man. Well, they were good, weren't they? Well, there you have it. Hope you liked this video. Let me know what story you found unsettling. And if you like this video, then hit the like. And if you haven't, then please subscribe. It's absolutely free. And it would be great to have you here. And so, until next video, take care and be well.